DJ SR.
A tornado
Play
flew
something
around my room before you came. Excuse the mess it made. It usually doesn't rain in Southern California, much like Arizona. My eyes don't shed tears, but boy they pour when I'm thinking
So,
about you.
breeding dwarf cichlids, it can be very easy or it can be incredibly difficult. To make it easier, I think I'll start off with breeding the simpler dwarf cichlids like cockatoides, like I have right in front of me. Domestic cockatoides, wild cockatoides can be hard. So breeding fish like cockatoides and Bolivian rams and Pelvicacrobus cribensis and some of the easier cribs, not particularly hard. Cribs are known to breed spontaneously if you have them in a pair or more. As long as you have a male and maybe a few females or vice versa, you're gonna have fry. Doesn't really matter as long as the tank is good enough to live in. They're gonna breed. Cribs are just like that, I guess. They're easy to breed and they're really hardy fish. That's why they're sold for so cheap in comparison to others like Apistos. Breeding these guys, it's not particularly hard. Breed them, just make sure all your conditions are met like I mentioned earlier. Your pH, you want the pH to be below 6.5 and above 4.5. So that's 4.5, 4.6, 5.5, 6.3, anything like that. Perfect for breeding most dwarf cichlids, especially if they're domestically raised, which means they've been bred by humans in captivity for a few generations. But breeding the harder dwarf cichlids can be, well, more difficult because sometimes they're a lot more delicate or they just don't want to breed for some reason. Species like Apistogramma standarchi can be kind of difficult to breed. It's one of the larger Apistos and dwarf cichlids. Microgeophagus ramirezi can be incredibly challenging. If you just want to have some breeding pairs, I'd go with cockatoides, cribensis, Bolivian rams, Alexbertosa. Really gotta figure out how to say their name right, but oh well. So the easier dwarf cichlids tend to be, moving on, a lot easier. To how to breed, sexing your fish, telling the difference between what gender they are, can be easy, can be difficult. Cockatoides and the rest of the Apistos usually get their differences in gender around like their coloration stuff around, I want to say inch, maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches. That's when they start coloring it up and you can tell the difference. Other fish, most dwarf cichlids actually it's like that, but some of them like rams can be pretty difficult to tell the difference. Blue rams, they have a black spot on the upper part of their face. If that black spot has any blue speckles in it, then it's a female. If it's solid black, then it's a guy. Also, the difference between all dwarf cichlids actually is the male. Let me get up close on one of these guys. Oh yeah, so let me zoom in on one of these guys. Camera chooses not to focus, so let me get up close. So that is a female right there. As you can see, gold color, gold brownish color, not very orange. And then up here is a male, really long fins, sharp dorsal fin. So that's how you tell the difference between Apistos and Pelvicacrobus males and females. So in these guys, it's a lot easier to tell the difference, but in species like rams, especially Bolivian rams, telling the difference is going to be practically impossible. Blue rams are a lot easier because they have that spiky dorsal fin, as well as Bolivians, but sometimes the guy doesn't have it, sometimes a female has a spiky fin. You never know. There's a lot of chance involved in telling the difference between gender and those guys. Alright, next up is the conditions for breeding conditions for breeding these guys. Like I said in earlier parts, you want to have temperature upwards of 79, 80, 81 to get them in the breeding mood. For pairs and harems and colonies that haven't had any fry before, it's really nice to lower the water level a few inches like you see in this tank. Actually, that's not at all me trying to get them to breed. That's me not having enough water to fill up the tank right now. But like you can see here, you can lower it a few inches, or you can lower it practically a few inches from the ground, whichever one works with your filter. We just keep it like that for 2 to 4 days, and then fill it back up with either RO water or nice aged water that you've been conditioned or you've been saving for maybe a day or two. RO water works really well because it mimics rain, which is what you're trying to mimic with the rainy season, which is when they start to breed. So keep it in low water, let it sit for a little bit. It's even better if you let the water evaporate rather than draining it, because you get the ammonia buildup, which is more realistic. Not ammonia, nitrate buildup. But then flood that new water in. Whoosh, they got new water. They think it's rainy season. It's breeding time. That works for most dwarf cichlid species. Sometimes a pair won't think it's rainy season, or they like the dry season better or something. I don't know. It varies sometimes. But that usually gets them started breeding. Then keep the water quality up. So that means water changes every week as a minimum. Yeah, even better if you can do it every day. The heater, keep it up around 79, 80 degrees, and they will keep on breeding. Every 2 weeks to 4 weeks, they'll have a new batch, depending on how good of parents they are, or how often, or like how fast or quickly they get rid of their fry. Because I've had females that raise their fry for 4 months and don't breed until I move them, or I've had females that breed, care for the fry for a couple of weeks, and then send them off into the world and get a new batch. Most of them will take care of them for as long as you leave them with them, as long as they don't pose a threat to the female, or as long as she doesn't think that they pose a threat. But keeping the conditions and the condition of the water and the temperature and pH all right is essential. The breeding tank. This personally is my second favorite part of breeding dwarf cichlids, is the ridiculous ways that you can breed these guys. There are 3 categories that dwarf cichlids fall into when they're breeding. 3 or all the above, which is pairs, harems, drawn a blank. Pairs, harems, or colonies is what I was trying to say. So you can breed them in pairs, which means 1 female, 1 male. 1 female, 1 male. Breeding in the tank. Most dwarf cichlids that breed in harems or colonies will also breed in pairs. So talking about pistos, most of the pistos. There are a few exceptions, like trifasciata will get really rowdy with the females and kill most of them before they get the chance to breed. So you have to keep them with at least 3 females, which means a bigger tank. But most of them, like Cacatoides, Borrelli, I think, breeds in harems. Bitaniata breeds in harems. So Cacatoides complex pretty much breeds in harems. So it's pairs, harems, colonies. Pair, like I said, 1 male, 1 female. They'll keep breeding together. Puffycochromis falls into this category, and this category only. Rams fall into this category, though sometimes they'll switch their mate after a couple spawns. Some of the Cacatoides fall into this category, like McMarsteri / Vegeta usually is harems. Harems or reverse harems. Usually it's a harem. Reverse harem doesn't make any sense for dwarf cichlids. So a harem is 1 male to 2 or more females. Usually it's 3 more females when you're talking about a harem. Harem breeding, just because people usually refer to 1 male and 2 females as a trio instead of a harem. So harem breeding, the male will breed with all the females in his territory, and usually the females get this weird pattern where it's like one female 1 month, and the next female a couple weeks later, the next female, and they'll just keep switching off breeding times, considering the male has to regenerate, I guess. But so the females will keep their fry around the cave where they were born. Sometimes they'll move them around, sometimes they won't. Moving around is a defensive mechanism to make sure most of the fry don't get eaten. But so the females will keep them around each one's territory, and the male will guard the territory from other males and females that aren't part of the harem. So harem breeding has its benefits and its drawbacks. Benefit to harem breeding is that you get more females breeding in one larger tank, so you don't really have to get a bunch of tanks to have pairs and each one of them spawning sometimes. Working on each tank separately. Drawbacks to a harem tank is that you only have one male, so that's every batch are half siblings, which means that breeding them together isn't totally bad, but after maybe like 2 generations of that, you're gonna get some defects in the fry, and that is something you do not want. Color loss has also been a problem sometimes with inbreeding these guys. So yeah, that's the drawback and the plus sides to it. Another plus to this and to colony breeding, which I'll get to later, is you can see them in a natural way that they breed. It's really cool to see if you have a large enough tank, 2 or 3 males guarding each one's territory, each one with 3 to 5 females guarding each batch of fry that they have. Sometimes females will steal each other's fry to teach their young ones to learn how to follow her instructions. So that's really interesting to watch. But obviously, a plus side to pair breeding is that you know which ones have which genetics. You can switch around the fry to make sure that you don't have too much inbreeding. It's pretty much the only benefit to that I can think of. And now for the third section, the colony breeding. Oof, my net getting in my way. Colony breeding for these guys is pretty spectacular, I guess you could say. This that you're seeing right now is technically a colony. Right now it's more of a harem, but it used to be a colony like a week ago when I had another male in here. So colony breeding is, like I just said, 2 or more males guarding each one's territory with 2 or more females in each one's territory. So colony breeding has its drawbacks. Drawback is it's hard, depending on what your tank is like, kind of hard to monitor when the breeding is and get the fry out. You're gonna need a really big tank, at least a 3-foot long tank to have 2 males in it. I recommend more than 3 feet, but I think this is a 4-foot tank right here, 4-foot tank. Yeah, it can get kind of annoying when one male just gets dominated by the other one and is not breeding. There's no point in having a tank. Other than that, it's incredibly fun to watch. Everyone guard their fry, the female moving them around, stealing other females' fry, watching the fry that's from a later generation, or earlier generation rather, find a way to make it on their own in the tank. One of them shows their face. I'll zoom in on one of the fry from that female that you're seeing right now. From her last spawn that are still in here, making their way. Yeah, I think I see one. If you look bottom of your screen, you might see one. They're still really small, so they're jumping around everywhere. There's the male of this tank. Ever since I took out the other male, he's been coming out a lot more. But he's the dominant male who's been breeding with all the females. There we go. So there's the dominant male. He's a wild I want to say Peru. But I'm not sure. He's a wild cockatoides. He's the blue color form. You can see that it's got that really metallic blue everywhere, and it's got that orange spike on the top of his dorsal fin and on his lower fins. I think this is where Orange Flash came from. That's where my guess is. The only wild cockatoides I've ever seen with orange on it, other than the double red, the preliminary double reds. So that's one male breeding with all these guys, or two or a couple of males breeding with all these guys. You get a lot of fry from it, so if you like to give your fry away or sell it, you can make a lot of money, or you can give your friends a lot of fry. However, it is hard to find a tank big enough, or at least space for a tank. This 33 long, 4 feet long, 40 gallon long. It's the same dimensions except a little taller, so it's kind of pointless to get. Other than after 4 feet, most standard tanks go to 6 feet with the 125, and then from there on it just gets longer, or they go into cubes. I don't know why someone decided to go to cubes, but whatever. Cubes are really good tanks for breeding. If the cube is big enough, like I've for a while now wanted to get a what are they called? Frag tank. That's what they are. Saltwater guys use them for raising coral fragments. But frag tanks are really, really good for breeding dwarf cichlids. It's nice and shallow, and they also have a really large footprint, which is just perfect for these guys. So they have a lot of space to go around. Instead of just going back and forth, they can go in circles, zigzags, whatever they choose to do. Go back over to that female. She's really angry at everyone. As you can see, when females start breeding, they get really, really aggressive. The domestic types I've seen, they still get pretty aggressive, just not as aggressive as this wild female. She is cleared out from that piece of driftwood all the way to the other wall. It is just her and her fry. Right now she's battling another female which bred across the, I guess you could say across the street. She's got eggs in her cave. So right now she's battling her. And if you look at that guppy right there, the guppy will not be there very long. Oh, guess she's okay with the guppy being there. Whatever. You saw her chase away the other cichlid. But yeah, she's taking care of her fry over there. We've got eggs across the street. I think I may have eggs soon over here. And then that's like the community area, I guess you could call it. When you're doing colonies, the way you want to arrange the tank is you want to section it, divide it up into sections. So as you can see, you've got 1, 2, 3, 3.5 sections right there. Each one with a couple of caves in it. So it gives the females kind of a blockade between each other, so they don't kill each other and have to fish out dead body, which I don't want to do, rather than have a breeding female. So yeah, you want to divide up the tank or have a bunch of leaf litter where they're not going to see each other that often. Oh, there goes the guppy.
Turn my headphones up.
Wouldn't mind saying that.
Louder.